We welcome you once again to today's study here in Santa Rosa, California. Our ministry, Revelation 14:1. We're dedicated to the truth of God's Word. We are very much aware of the false interpretation by false teachers in Christianity today. And we hope that the little we do will help clear up these areas of doubts that we've been led to believe over the years. So our mission, truth, and the only truth of the Bible to be exalted. We also talk about present truth, things that are happening right now, current events. And one of the topics that's really hot out in the news today is the subject of climate change, global warming, or whatever the terms used. But very lately we've been hearing a lot about this climate change. So our topic today is the conspiracy behind this climate change. What does the Bible tell us about this? So today's topic, climate change conspiracy. We will begin at creation. In Genesis chapter 1, verse 6, it says, "And God said, let there be a firmament in the sky, in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." We've touched on this in some of our studies before. God it is telling us that there are two layers of water, and there's a firmament in between that divides the lower layer from the upper layer. That's verse 6. Verse 7 says, "And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so." So God purposely separated these two layers of water. The one right above the earth, He put a firmament in between, and another layer of water above the firmament. Excuse me. So that is clearly recorded here in Genesis chapter 1, verses 6 and 7. If we move on a little further in Genesis 1, verses 9 to 11, it says, "And God said, let the water under the heavens be gathered together unto one place." So He divided even the waters underneath. "And let the dry land appear, and it was so." So the waters that were underneath the firmament, He moved it to one side, and land appeared. So dry land and the sea. Verse 10, "And God called the dry land earth, and gathering together of the waters He called the seas. And God saw that it was good." So He created those two layers of water and the firmament, and on the next day He moved the waters to one side and raised the land. So this is the world, the perfect world that He is creating for Adam and Eve to live in. That perfect world which will enable Adam and Eve to live forever, eternally. They were meant to live forever. And verse 11 says, and God said, let the earth bring forth grass and herb yielding seeds, and the fruit trees yielding fruits after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth, and it was so. So that the dry land brought out this green, the grasses and the trees, and this was the perfect ideal land for Adam and Eve. If we move fast forward to the 7th chapter of Genesis, that was about close to 2,000 years after Adam and Eve. Both Adam and Eve have died by now. They had sinned, and that perfect world has been affected. And now, close to 2,000 years later, this is what happened. In verse 11 of Genesis chapter 7, it says, in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month and 17th day of the month. It's very precise, exact on the dates. The same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened. So you see, this time, but close to 2,000 years after creation, when he created that perfect earth, this is one major event that happened. And it says here, on the 600th year of Noah, that the fountains of the great deep were broken up. Remember, he moved the waters to one side and the land, and he created all these. Those deep into the earth was broken up. And also those layers of waters up in the skies was broken up as well. The windows of heaven were opened. So something very great happened during this time. This happened after a 120-year probation. God had given man 120 years. Man has deteriorated from that first sin that Adam and Eve committed in the Garden of Eden. Close to 2,000 years later, that sin has multiplied, and it has really forced God to regret his creation. God regretted creating man. He was going to destroy the whole earth and the sinful man together with it. However, one man, except for one man, was reason enough to scale down his total plan of destruction. He was going to completely annihilate the earth because he regretted creating it. But for one man, Noah, Noah's family benefited from Noah's faithfulness. God was still going to destroy the result of sin on earth, but needed to save Noah and his family. This is what he did instead. So instead of destroying the whole earth and bring it to an end, this is what he did. Number one, he switched off the moon. He switched the moon off, turned the switch off. The moon, which was glowing, just turned off. And it has become that passive element floating out in the atmosphere of today. There's no light coming out of the moon today. God had switched it off during this time. What else did God do? He reduced the sun's power by 7-fold. So the sun was 7 times stronger than it is today. During Noah's time, he switched it, he weakened the power of the sun 7 times. So 2 things he did. Switch the moon off and reduce the power of the sun. How do we know that? We'll find out from the Bible. In Genesis, is it chapter 1? Verse 14. God said, "Let there be light in the firmament of the heavens," the 4th day. In the 4th day of creation, God created these two, the sun, 2 sources of light. God said, "Let there be light in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be signs and for seasons, and for days and years." Verse 15 says, "And let them be for lights in the firmament to the heaven, and give light upon the earth." And it was so. So these two, the sun and the moon, they were created on the 4th day. Excuse me. To give light to the earth. Both of them, they were both sources of light. The sun was giving light out, and also the moon was also giving light out. Verse 16 says, "And God made the 2 great lights." So these 2 were both giving out lights, but at different intensities. The greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And verse 17 says, "And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth." So you see, just a few years back, in our lifetime, for those of us who are a little older, man went and stepped on the moon. There was no burning, it wasn't a burning orb like the sun. You try and go and step on the sun, you won't survive. The moon was switched off during that time, during the great flood of Noah's time. That's the reason why it is a passive element floating in the, it's just reflecting the light from the sun. And sometimes we see it glows. That's not its own light, it's coming from the sun, reflected on the moon, and it's sort of, we see it as if it's giving out light. The moon has been switched off. So we know that from creation the moon was giving out light, and the sun too was giving out even more light, the greater light. The near perfect equilibrium existed on the earth from creation till 1654. 1054 years later, when man's probation expired. God had given man, told Noah, told his grandfather Methuselah, and told his father, Terah, I think Noah's father, to start preaching to the earth. And I'm giving you 120 years to repent of your ways. Come back to me. Worship me. Stop worshipping the idols of the world. Worship me. 120 years, Noah and his sons and his father and his grandfather, Methuselah, they both died well before the flood. They did not die because of the flood. They died before the flood. They were preaching to the earth. At the same time, they were building the ark. Why are you building that ark on the mountain? The whole world will be flooded. You better repent. Oh, okay. So some of them came and helped in building the ark. But it took too long, so they went back to join their friends in merrymaking. So that near perfect earth, that from creation, was now completely corrupted 2,000 years later during the time of Noah. Back to Eden, Adam and Eve were created to live eternally. The perfect earth God created enabled the everlasting effect of all creation. That perfect earth. Remember, he divided the waters in the skies, and then he separated the water from the land, and then he made the sun and the moon on the fourth day. And then he created animals and trees and all these. They were perfect. They were meant to make Adam and Eve and all their descendants last forever. They were supposed to last forever, eternally. It was the introduction of sin that brought in death, limited life, and degeneration of life as a whole. Because of sin, that things happened. That life was now limited. They lived none, if you read the Bible records, none of those patriarchs lived above the 1,000-year mark. Only Methuselah was the longest. He lived in 965, I think, or 60, somewhere. He was the longest living human being. He lived for 900 years. Noah, when he was 600, on his 600th year, was when the flood took place. He lived another 300 years after that and died. After the flood, life became shorter and shorter and shorter until today. We only lived to a maximum of about 100 or 110. But most of us die off at 70, 60. It has shortened. Things have degenerated. And today we are complaining about climate change, global warming, and all. So the perfect earth included those two great lights, the sun and the moon. Today there is only one great light. There's no more two. The second light had been extinguished. When did that happen? We've sort of realized that happened during that time. The sun, the moon, and gravity. There is no specific verse in the Bible that tells us when that took place, the switching off of the moon and the reduction of the power of the sun. However, we know of a cataclysmic event that took place and affected both the heavens and the earth. That event took place in the 600th year of Noah's life. The gravitational equilibrium that held this near-perfect earth. Why we call it near-perfect? Because of the sin. Things began to degenerate after Adam and Eve. They were chased away from the Garden of Eden. Things began to crumble. The trees began to shed leaves. The animals began to turn wild and fed on each other. The gravitational equilibrium that held the near-perfect earth was disturbed, causing the flood from underneath and also from above. Remember that layer of water above the firmament. We learn from science today that both the moon and the sun have a great effect on the forces of gravity on this earth. We can go to our encyclopedias or go on the internet and we can read more about the gravity and how these two bodies, the moon and the sun, affect the gravity on this earth. Well, let's go back to climate change. The weather on this earth has been adversely affected from that day onwards, from Noah's day. Changes in weather patterns, the 4 seasons, and many more unknown effects have been realized since that day. That near-perfect equilibrium has been disturbed. That state of affair has been in place from then, 4,500 years ago, till today. So we should expect a continuous variation in weather patterns or climate changes to continue to worsen. So we're concerned today about weather changes, climate change, global warming, and man is trying to work things out to stop this deterioration. Can we do it? Megabucks in play. Lots of money will be made in the promotion of climate change, folks. This is involving money, and that's why the whole world is attracted to climate change. Even the Prime Minister of Fiji, who presides over the UN Climate Change Committee, is able to see this. He realizes he can make money out of this. He abandons his Prime Minister's office to his assistants to travel the world seeking funds for this purpose. So you see, many of these things, because of the money involved, people are attracted to it, even though they know that it's whatever man tries to do is insignificant. Insignificant. So that's the man who is running the COP23 show today, the Prime Minister of Fiji. And he's traveling the world asking member countries to contribute to the climate change work that they are doing. Donald Trump, too, our President of the United States, has been in the news lately regarding his stance over the climate change. He does not believe in it. Listen to what he tweeted. There's so many tweets that he did regarding this subject, but I just put down two here for us to ponder on. This is what he said. When was this? 26th of January. Any and all weather events are used by global warming hoaxsters. He called them hoaxsters, to justify higher taxes to save our planet. They don't believe it. It's the money. They don't believe in the climate change, that they could do something to change the climate. But it's the money that's attracting them. That's what Donald Trump is saying. He said that in 2014, even before he became the president. Also, another tweet here, he says, "It is snowing in Texas and in Louisiana, record-setting freezing temperatures throughout the country." So he says, they're complaining about global warming, the earth is warming up. But he says, up there in Texas, it's snowing, freezing temperatures, Texas and Louisiana. And it says, global warming is an expensive hoax. He's saying it's a scam. Why is he saying this? This is another of his tweets. This is what he said. This very expensive global warming bullshit has got to stop. Our planet is freezing. They're complaining about global warming, but our planet is freezing. Record low temperatures. And our global warming scientists are stuck in ice. Well, he has a point there. These people are more interested in money, the money behind this scheme. They know they cannot do anything about it. Why? Because the Bible tells us so. This thing was initiated by God himself. Why? Because of sin. Sinful man. The reality, Trump is looking at the money. During a news conference Thursday in the Rose Garden at the White House, Trump said the withdrawal, this is in the current events. He came back from Europe 2 weeks ago, or a week ago, and announced that the US is withdrawing from that climate change amongst the leaders of Europe. US would begin negotiations to possibly, or he said that his withdrawal is aimed at keeping his campaign promise to put American workers first. But he added that the US would begin negotiations to possibly re-enter the Paris Accord. So he said, I'm withdrawing the US from this agreement. But then it's possible that we will come back. Why is he doing that? The agreement is a massive redistribution of United States wealth. This is what his argument. Those agreements that past presidents of the United States had with the leaders of Europe is just the redistribution of the wealth of this country. They're removing the wealth from the United States to Europe. Remember, he complained, he talked to the European leaders about their contribution to the NATO organization. He said, America is funding most of these things, even this new building, the NATO headquarters in Brussels. He said, I won't ask the question, ask you how much it cost, but I'm sure most of our American money is funding this building. That's what he's saying. And he has a point there. And he says it's to give their country an economic edge over the United States. That's not going to happen while I'm president. So he said, all this time, the agreements that our past presidents have done with the European leaders was just taking money out of the country and redistributing it to Europe. While I'm president, that won't happen. I'm withdrawing our contribution so that we can, at one time, he said, is leaving that option open. We will come back to that deal. Come back and make a deal which is good for us. Free the US and employment. Trump's main concern is to put his voters back to work. He's keeping his promise. This is one thing good about Trump. He recognizes the megabucks involved and will participate to benefit America. He will be back in there, not because he believes that it is a hoax or a lie, but to take advantage of the benefits for his voters. Remember, he said, I'm withdrawing, but I'm leaving that window open. I might come back and be part of the agreement. He's withdrawing to cancel the past agreement that past presidents have done with Europe. So he's taken that off the table. But then he said, I will come back because I need my workers. New technology that will come because of this climate change, I want my workers to benefit from too. His initial withdrawal is to release the US from the disastrous deals by past presidents. The past presidents had put the US in. So that's his reason for withdrawing. But he's saying that I may come back and join you guys. Well, let's go back to the climate change. Man cannot repair that damage. We know what the damage is. The moon had been switched off and the sun had been reduced in its intensity. That's the damage. You think this climate change with so much money, those megabucks behind it, can fix that, can switch the moon back, can increase the power of the sun again? I don't think so. We may be able to claim some improvement in various facets of global weather change. The reality is we cannot do anything about the root cause of the problem as per the reduction of the sun and the moon intensity. It is God himself, only God, who will do the repair work. He prophesied it in his own words for you and me to know and not to be fooled by the advocates of climate change. So he's already recorded that in the Bible. We will find out where. Isaiah chapter 30, verse 26. It says, the recreated or new earth. Moreover, the light of the moon shall be as of the light of the sun. Isaiah is talking about the new earth now. The earth that will be recreated after the third, Jesus returns to this earth a third time. It says, the moon shall be as the light of the sun. So this passive moon now, during that time, will begin to glow again. If you look out at the sun, what the sun is today, that will be the moon, the strength of the moon in this newly created. That was its original intensity in the Garden of Eden. The moon shall be as the light of the sun, and the light of the sun shall be sevenfold. The sun will be increased 7 times more. As the light of 7 days in the day that the Lord bindeth up the breach of his people. When did that breach happen? When Adam and Eve sinned in the Garden of Eden. That was when the breach, that agreement between God and his creature was breached. And he healeth the stroke of their wound. When did the wound come into play? Noah's time. The wound happened when he switched off the moon and he reduced the power of the sun. Things happened. The deep broken up. The skies, the windows opened up in the sky. That caused that flood, which flooded the whole earth. That's when the wound. So during that time, Isaiah prophesies, the moon will go back to its normal power and the sun returned to its 7 times more powerful state. That is where we will end our study today. Let us not be easily fooled by what the world brings to us, no matter whether it comes from highly educated scientists of today. We rely on the Bible and the Bible alone. And it tells us that no one will ever repair the damage of the moon and the sun. When they were switched off or reduced in power, things happened. The gravity between the sun and the moon upset the equilibrium on this earth and caused that flood. 2,000 years after creation. So let's keep on praising God, because he is the only source of life on this earth. Let us pray.